Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, all the way to Renaissance Florence, a city shimmering with artistic genius, political intrigue, and, well, let's just say a whole lot of ambition. Imagine yourself there, a young artist, fresh-faced and full of dreams, about to enter one of the most exclusive and cutthroat clubs in history, a Renaissance art guild. You're probably picturing elegant studios filled with light, master artists gently guiding your hand, and the sweet smell of fresh paint. Think again. You're more likely to encounter the pungent odor of linseed oil mixed with the sweat of intense labor, the constant drone of chisels, and the sharp glint in the eyes of rivals. This isn't just about painting pretty pictures, it's about survival, power, and securing your place in an unforgiving world where one wrong brushstroke or one ill-spoken word could end your career before it even begins. Seriously, you probably wouldn't survive a week. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere amazing, let me know your location and local time in the comments now. Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive in Florence, the cradle of the Renaissance, with little more than a worn tunic and a burning desire to create. The city itself feels alive, a vibrant tapestry of soaring domes, bustling piazzas, and the constant hum of commerce and artistry. Every corner seems to whisper tales of masterworks in progress, of frescoes drying on damp walls, and of sculptures slowly emerging from cold marble. You've heard the legends of the Accademia del Disegno, one of the most prestigious art guilds, a place where the likes of Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci once honed their craft. Your heart pounds with a mix of awe and trepidation as you approach the imposing guild hall, its stone facade weathered by centuries of Florentine sun and rain. As you step inside, the immediate impression is one of organized chaos. The air is thick with the scent of turpentine, plaster dust, and something vaguely metallic from the hammering of tools. Apprentices, no older than yourself, scurry about carrying buckets of pigment, grinding minerals into fine powders, or meticulously cleaning brushes. Older, more experienced artisans, their faces etched with concentration, lean over drafting tables, their hands moving with practiced precision. The din is constant, the rhythmic tap, tap, tap of a sculptor's mallet, the soft swish of a painter's brush, the murmur of hushed conversations, and the occasional sharp command from a master. This isn't a quiet sanctuary for artistic contemplation. It's a factory, a bustling workshop, and a fiercely competitive school all rolled into one. You quickly learn that joining a guild isn't like enrolling in a modern art school. It's more akin to indentured servitude, a long and arduous journey from hopeful novice to, if you're truly exceptional, a revered master. Your first task is mundane, yet utterly essential, sweeping the floors, fetching water, preparing canvases, and mixing paints. You spend countless hours grinding raw pigments, lapis lazuli for brilliant blues, malachite for vibrant greens, ochres for earthy yellows and reds. It's backbreaking work, and your hands are perpetually stained, your muscles aching by the end of each long day. Yet, you observe, you listen, and you absorb. You watch the masters, their movements economical and confident, as they transform mere earth and stone into breathtaking visions. You learn that the beauty of a fresco isn't just in the brushwork, but in the careful preparation of the plaster, the precise timing of application. The master you're assigned to, Maestro Alessandro, is a man of few words and stern countenance. His reputation for portraiture is renowned throughout Florence, and his commissions come directly from the most powerful families, including the illustrious Medici. He doesn't offer praise easily, and his critiques are blunt, often delivered with a sharp rap of his knuckles against your head if you make a mistake. One day, you're meticulously grinding cinnabar for a rich red, trying to achieve the perfect consistency. You're tired, your arm is sore, and your attention wanders for a split second. The result is a slightly grainy texture. Maestro Alessandro appears silently beside you, picks up a pinch of the pigment, and rubs it between his thumb and forefinger. His eyes narrow. This boy, he rumbles, his voice like grinding stone, is not blood. It is mud. Do it again. You swallow, your face hot with shame, and start over, understanding that every detail matters, every single grain. Life as an apprentice is also about navigating the unspoken rules. You quickly realize that respect isn't given, it's earned, often through sheer endurance and unquestioning obedience. The older apprentices, barely a few years your senior, wield surprising power, delegating the most tedious and unpleasant tasks, and occasionally enjoying a cruel laugh at your expense. They test your patience, your resilience, and your commitment. You learn to keep your head down, to work diligently, and to anticipate needs before they are voiced. It's a subtle dance of subservience and aspiration, where every small victory, a perfectly mixed batch of paint, a cleanly stretched canvas, feels like a monumental achievement. One afternoon, a senior apprentice, Giacomo, known for his caustic wit and a tendency to borrow supplies, tasks you with polishing a set of Maestro Alessandro's finest silver point styluses. These aren't just tools, they're valuable instruments, essential for the delicate preliminary drawings. As you polish, one slips from your grasp and clatters to the stone floor, leaving a tiny, almost imperceptible nick on its tip. Your heart leaps into your throat. This isn't just a mistake, it's an act of negligence that could incur Maestro Alessandro's wrath. Giacomo, who has been watching with a smirk, steps forward. Clumsy fool, he sneers, picking up the stylus. The maestro will have your hide for this. He eyes you, a calculating glint in his gaze. Unless, of course, you were to compensate me for my silence. You understand immediately. This is a shakedown, a test of your willingness to play their game. Do you defy him and risk punishment from the maestro? Or do you concede and become beholden to Giacomo? You weigh your options. The nick is so small. Perhaps it won't be noticed. But the threat of Giacomo's malicious tongue looms larger. You decide to play it safe, for now. You nod, grudgingly. What do you want, you ask? Your voice barely a whisper. He grins, a predatory glint in his eye. Let's just say a certain amount of your choice pigments. The good ones, mind you, it's a bitter pill. But you realize this is the cost of operating in this world? The days blend into weeks, and weeks into months. Your hands grow calloused, your back perpetually aches, but your understanding of the artistic process deepens. You're no longer just mixing paints. You're learning about the properties of light and shadow, the nuances of color theory, and the anatomy of the human form, even if it's just from observing the models who occasionally pose for the masters. You spend evenings sketching by candlelight, trying to capture the subtle curves of a drapery or the expressive lines of a face, striving for the perfection you see in Maestro Alessandro's work. You also begin to grasp the intricate web of politics that underpins the guild. It's not just about artistic merit. It's about connections, patronage, and reputation. Families commission works not only for their beauty, but as symbols of their wealth and power. Guild masters compete fiercely for these lucrative contracts, and whispers of sabotage and influence peddling are common. One common historical fact often overlooked is that Renaissance art guilds were not merely artistic fraternities, but powerful economic and political entities, holding significant sway in city governance and often acting as monopolies. They controlled everything from pricing to the training of new artists, effectively dictating who could and could not practice the trade. If you weren't in a guild, you were an artistic outcast, unable to secure major commissions or even legally sell your work. One particularly fascinating detail you stumble upon is the existence of the secret ingredient rumors. Every master seems to have their own closely guarded method for achieving certain effects, a unique varnish, a special primer, or a particular way of preparing the wood panels. One old journeyman, Pietro, known for his perpetually paint-splattered smock and an uncanny ability to sniff out gossip. Once whispered to you about Maestro Verrocchio's supposed use of ground-up pearls in his paint to achieve a unique luminescence, he claimed it was a closely guarded secret, passed down only to the most trusted apprentices. Pietro even swore he saw Verrocchio himself. Late one night, meticulously crushing a tiny iridescent pearl with a mortar and pestle. While such claims are likely exaggerated, they highlight the intense secrecy and proprietary nature of artistic techniques during this period. The fear of industrial espionage was very real, even for art. Your first minor breakthrough comes when Maestro Alessandro allows you to prepare a small panel for a new portrait. He's notoriously particular about the gesso application, the white, absorbent ground that prepares the surface for paint. You've watched him apply countless layers, each one thin and even, sanded down to a silky smoothness. This time, you take extra care, mixing the gesso with warm water to a perfect consistency, brushing it on in delicate, cross-hatched layers, and sanding each one with painstaking precision. You work late into the night, the only sound the soft rasp of sandpaper against wood. The next morning, Maestro Alessandro inspects your work. He runs his hand over the surface, his brow furrowed in concentration. For a moment, you brace yourself for a critique, a dismissive wave of his hand. Instead, a faint, almost imperceptible nod. Adequate, he grunts. But his eyes hold a flicker of something resembling approval. It's not praise, not by a long shot, but in the maestro's world. Adequate is high praise indeed. You feel a surge of quiet triumph. Yet, even as you begin to prove your worth, the political undercurrents of the guild persist. There are constant debates among the masters about the correct way to depict certain subjects, the proper use of new pigments, and the adherence to traditional styles versus the embrace of innovation. Historians still debate whether the rigid guild structures stifled artistic innovation or provided a stable framework for its development. Some argue that the strict training and traditional methods ensured a high level of craftsmanship, while others contend that they created an environment resistant to radical new ideas. You see both sides. The discipline is undeniable, teaching you foundational skills that will serve you for a lifetime. But you also hear the whispers of younger, more daring artists who chafe under the old master's conservative tastes, eager to experiment with perspective, light, and anatomical realism in ways that challenge the established norms. One evening, after the day's work is done, you find yourself alone with Pietro. He's usually too busy gossiping or napping to offer genuine advice. But tonight, perhaps because of the quiet solitude, he speaks with a rare sincerity. He eyes you over a half-eaten loaf of stale bread. "You work hard, boy," he mumbles, wiping crumbs from his beard. "But hard work alone won't make you a master. This guild, it's a nest of vipers. Everyone wants what the other has. The maestro's favor. A big commission, even just a better studio space." He leans closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Remember old Marco, brilliant sculptor, best in marble, but he offended the wrong patron. Spoke out against the guild's pricing, and poof, vanished. No commissions, no apprentices, no work. He ended up carving gravestones outside the city walls. A sad end for a great talent." Pietro's words chill you. It's a stark reminder that artistic brilliance alone is not enough. Survival in this world requires cunning, diplomacy, and an understanding of the unspoken rules of power. You realize that your journey through the guild will be as much about navigating people as it is about mastering paint and chisel. You have to be an artist, yes, but also a politician, a strategist, and sometimes a survivor. Your days continue with the relentless rhythm of apprentice life. You're often sent on errands, carrying messages or small parcels from Maestro Alessandro to various workshops and noble palaces across the city. These trips, while seemingly trivial, offer glimpses into the wider world of Florentine art. You see other studios, catch snippets of conversations between rival masters, and observe the opulence of the patrons' homes. You learn that a commission isn't just about the artwork itself, but about the relationship with the patron, a delicate balance of flattery, artistic vision, and timely delivery. You see how different masters approach their craft. Some meticulous and slow, others quick and improvisational. You note the subtle differences in their palettes, their brushwork, and the way they interact with their own apprentices. Every observation is a lesson, a piece of the puzzle you're trying to assemble about how this intricate world operates. One day, you're tasked with delivering a small, exquisitely detailed preliminary sketch by Maestro Alessandro to a wealthy merchant, a man named Lorenzo Bellini, known for his discerning taste and notoriously short temper. Bellini's palazzo is a magnificent structure, filled with tapestries, ancient Roman busts, and the faint scent of incense. As you wait in the antechamber, you overhear a heated discussion between Bellini and another master, Maestro Fabrizio, a rival of Alessandro's. Fabrizio is clearly trying to poach a commission, subtly criticizing Alessandro's slow pace and suggesting his own more modern approach. Bellini listens impassively, nodding occasionally. When you are finally called in, Bellini glances at the sketch, then at you. So, the young one from Maestro Alessandro's workshop. He says, his voice surprisingly soft, but with an edge of steel. Tell me, boy, is your master as traditional as they say, or does he embrace the new currents of art? It's a loaded question, designed to elicit a response that could potentially damage Alessandro's reputation. You remember Pietro's warning about speaking out of turn? You choose your words carefully. Maestro Alessandro. You reply. Your voice steady despite the tremor in your stomach, is a master of timeless beauty. His art endures because it speaks to the soul, not just the fleeting fashions of the day. Bellini's eyes narrow slightly, then a slow smile spreads across his face. Well spoken, young man, he says, a hint of surprise in his tone. Perhaps there is hope for the old ways after all. You have, unknowingly, passed a small test, affirming your loyalty and demonstrating a nascent understanding of guild politics. You leave the palazzo with a sense of quiet accomplishment, realizing that even the simplest errand can become a strategic maneuver in the high-stakes game of Renaissance art. The apprentice's dream of artistic glory quickly gives way to the stark realities of the guild, and you find yourself constantly navigating the shadow cast by Maestro Alessandro. He is a titan in his field, his portraits gracing the walls of the wealthiest Florentine palaces. Yet his presence is more like a demanding force of nature than a gentle mentor. You spend your days under his watchful, often critical, eye, learning not just the technical aspects of painting, but the rigorous discipline required to excel. Every brushstroke, every color mix, every subtle curve of a line is scrutinized. Mistakes are not merely corrected. They are lessons etched into your memory through sharp words or a dismissive gesture that speaks volumes. One morning, you're tasked with preparing a large panel for a new altarpiece. This isn't just any panel. It's a massive piece of seasoned poplar, destined to hold a grand religious scene. Maestro Alessandro insists on overseeing the gesso application himself, a rare occurrence that signals the importance of the commission. You prepare the room, ensuring the temperature is just right, the gesso mixture perfectly smooth and lump-free. As he begins to apply the first thin layers, his movements are almost meditative, a stark contrast to his usual brusqueness. He explains in a rare moment of instruction that the gesso isn't just a base, it's the very soul of the painting, reflecting light back through the layers of pigment, giving the colors their unique luminosity. Think of it, he murmurs, his voice low and steady, as the moon beneath the water. It gives the surface its glow. This unexpected poetic turn from the gruff maestro surprises you, offering a fleeting glimpse into the profound connection he has with his craft. But moments of serenity are fleeting. The demands of the guild are relentless. and the maestro's expectations are unyielding. You often find yourself working long into the night by the flickering light of an oil lamp, your eyes burning, your hand cramped from grinding pigments or sketching countless anatomical studies. The other apprentices, equally exhausted, offer a mix of camaraderie and quiet resentment. There's a shared understanding of the arduous journey, but also an underlying tension, as everyone vies for the maestro's limited attention and the slim chance of being chosen for more significant tasks. One day, Maestro Alessandro assigns you to prepare the palette for his next portrait sitting. This is a task usually reserved for more experienced apprentices, a sign that he might be recognizing your growing competence. You carefully lay out the pigments, the rich siennas, the deep umbers, the vibrant vermilion, and the ethereal ultramarine, painstakingly ground and mixed with linseed oil to the perfect consistency. You arrange them in a specific order, as he prefers, anticipating his needs. When the maestro begins to paint, his brush moves with incredible speed and precision, his eyes darting between the model and the canvas. He rarely speaks, his focus absolute. You stand by, ready to mix more paint, clean a brush, or hand him a fresh rag. For hours, you are a silent observer, witnessing the magic unfold as he brings life to the canvas. You marvel at how he captures the subtle play of light on skin, the depth in the sitter's eyes, the delicate folds of their silk garment. It's a masterclass, and you absorb every detail, filing it away for your own artistic journey. However, the shadow of the master isn't just about demanding artistic perfection. It's also about navigating his mercurial temperament and protecting your own fragile position. Maestro Alessandro has favorites, and those who fall out of favor can find their opportunities vanish overnight. There's the story of Piero, a talented young apprentice who dared to suggest a compositional change to one of Maestro Alessandro's preliminary sketches. The maestro, enraged by the perceived disrespect, banished Piero to the menial task of cleaning brushes for months, effectively sidelining his artistic development. It's a cautionary tale whispered among the apprentices, a stark reminder of the absolute authority the master wields. Your mentor's influence extends beyond the studio walls. He is a prominent figure in the guild, attending council meetings, voting on new regulations, and fiercely protecting his artistic turf. You often hear hushed conversations about rivalries with other masters, Maestro Lorenzo, known for his grand frescoes, or Maestro Isabella, celebrated for her intricate illuminated manuscripts. These aren't just artistic disagreements, they are battles for commissions, for prestige, and for control over the flow of wealth and patronage within Florence. You realize that your own future is inextricably linked to Maestro Alessandro's standing, and your loyalty must be unwavering, at least outwardly. One cold afternoon, a messenger arrives with an urgent summons from a lesser noble, a Count Valerius, who wishes a portrait of his ailing wife before it is too late. Maestro Alessandro, already burdened with other prestigious commissions, dismisses the request with a wave of his hand. "Tell him I am engaged with more pressing matters," he grumbles, focusing on his current work. But the messenger persists, explaining the Count's desperation and offering a generous, albeit unusual, payment, a rare collection of ancient Roman coins. The maestro hesitates. While the payment is tempting, accepting such a quick, emotionally charged commission could disrupt his meticulous schedule and potentially lower his perceived status among the more discerning patrons. He sighs, a weary sound. Very well. He finally concedes. But the sittings will be brief, and my time is precious. You learn that even the most powerful masters must occasionally weigh pride against practicality, especially when faced with the lure of unique treasures. Despite his demanding nature, Maestro Alessandro occasionally offers glimpses of profound insight. One evening, after a particularly frustrating day where you struggled with a perspective drawing, he finds you still hunched over your work, eraser shavings littering your drawing board. He walks over, silent as a shadow, and studies your drawing. You brace yourself for a lecture. Instead, he places a gnarled hand on your shoulder. Art is not about seeing what is there. Boy, he says, his voice softer than you've ever heard it. It is about seeing what could be there. The space between the lines, the light that is not yet painted. That is where true art resides. He then gently takes your charcoal, makes a single, decisive stroke, and suddenly the flat drawing gains depth, the illusion of space appearing as if by magic. It's a revelation, a moment that unlocks a new way of seeing for you, a profound lesson that transcends mere technique. However, the guild environment also fosters a competitive spirit among the apprentices themselves. There's a constant, unspoken comparison, a silent vying for the maestro's approval. Giacomo, the same apprentice who extorted pigments from you, continues to be a thorn in your side. He's quick to point out your mistakes to the maestro, subtly undermine your efforts, and spread rumors if he feels you are gaining too much ground. One day, you're tasked with preparing a batch of gold leaf for an illuminated manuscript Maestro Alessandro is working on. It's delicate, precise work, requiring a steady hand and absolute concentration. Giacomo accidentally bumps your arm, causing a delicate sheet of gold leaf to tear. He offers a sarcastic apology, but his eyes gleam with malice. You clench your jaw, resisting the urge to retaliate. You realize that confrontation would only escalate the situation and draw the maestro's unwanted attention. Instead, you calmly gather the torn pieces, recognizing that you'll simply have to redo the work. It's a frustrating setback, but it teaches you to be more vigilant and to choose your battles wisely. A historical detail that often surprises people is how many artists in Renaissance guilds were actually master craftsmen in various specialized fields, not just painters or sculptors in the modern sense. A guild like the Accademia del Disegno encompassed painters, sculptors, goldsmiths, architects, and even tapestry weavers. An apprentice might learn painting techniques from one master, but then be exposed to sculpture or metalwork from others. This cross-disciplinary training was common, reflecting the holistic view of art during the Renaissance. It also meant that the political landscape within the guild was even more complex, with different factions representing various crafts and their specific interests. One peculiar little-known fact you discover is the use of apprentice diaries, often small, hastily bound notebooks where apprentices would jot down observations, sketches, and even personal grievances. These weren't formal records, but informal journals. You learn that some apprentices would secretly copy down recipes for pigments, details of master techniques, or even crude caricatures of their mentors. You even find one dusty, forgotten diary tucked away in a corner of the workshop, belonging to an apprentice from decades past. Inside, alongside detailed anatomical sketches, are witty, sarcastic remarks about the master's stinginess with good wine, and complaints about the endless task of grinding lead white. It's a humanizing glimpse into the daily grind of an apprentice's life, a testament to the fact that even in the presence of genius, the mundane realities of life persisted. As you navigate this complex environment, you become more adept at reading the room, understanding the unspoken cues, and anticipating the maestro's moods. You learn to offer subtle assistance without being asked, to clean up before being told, and to simply be present and observant. Your diligence begins to pay off in small ways. The maestro trusts you with more delicate tasks, like preparing the finely sharpened charcoal sticks for his preliminary drawings, or carefully drying the precious walnut oil used as a paint binder. These are not glamorous tasks, but they are crucial, and the trust implied is a reward in itself. However, the question of artistic liberty constantly simmers beneath the surface. Historians still debate whether the guild system ultimately stifled or fostered artistic genius. While it provided a structured path for training and a stable economic framework, it also enforced strict rules and often conservative tastes. A common argument is that it ensured high quality and standardized practices, which was essential for large-scale commissions. On the other hand, radical innovators like Caravaggio or even Leonardo, who often clashed with traditional norms, might have found the guild system restrictive. You see this tension play out daily. Maestro Alessandro, for all his genius, is rooted in tradition. He adheres to established compositional rules and a precise classical style. Yet, you hear whispers of younger artists experimenting with sfumato and chiaroscuro in new and daring ways, challenging the very foundations of the art you are learning. You find yourself wondering if you will ever be able to truly express your own vision within the confines of such a rigid system, or if you will forever be bound by the shadow of your master. The tension between adhering to tradition and embracing innovation is a constant undercurrent in the guild. One evening, as you are meticulously cleaning the maestro's brushes, he is in deep conversation with another older master, Maestro Filippo, known for his beautiful but overtly classical religious works. They are arguing about a new trend in portraiture, where artists are beginning to depict subjects with more naturalistic poses and expressions, sometimes even showing imperfections like wrinkles or scars. Maestro Filippo dismisses it as crude realism, insisting that true art should elevate and idealize. Maestro Alessandro, surprisingly, is more measured. There is merit in showing the truth of a man, he muses, stroking his chin, but only if that truth serves to illuminate a greater beauty. You listen intently, realizing that even masters of their craft are not immune to the changing tides of artistic taste. It's a subtle shift, but one that hints at the evolving landscape of Renaissance art. A landscape you are just beginning to navigate. The whispers of the new, the daring, the unconventional, are slowly but surely seeping into the venerable halls of the guild, and you sense that the coming years will be a battleground for artistic ideals. The air in the guild hall, typically a mix of turpentine and plaster dust, now carries a faint, acrid tang of something else, the subtle poison of rivalry. You quickly learn that while artistic mastery is the ultimate goal, surviving the daily grind means navigating a minefield of whispers, backhanded compliments, and outright sabotage among your fellow apprentices and even the junior masters. Every successful brushstroke you make, every word of faint approval from Maestro Alessandro, is noted by others, fueling their ambition and sometimes their resentment. Giacomo, the senior apprentice who extorted pigments from you, remains a constant irritant. His taunts are subtle, his efforts to undermine you just shy of avert. He accidentally spills water near your carefully arranged pigments, forcing you to remix them, or forgets to relay a message from the maestro, leading to a minor reprimand. You learn to anticipate his moves, to protect your work, and to keep your guard up. Even during moments of apparent camaraderie, he's not the only one, either. There's Isabella, a quiet, diligent apprentice known for her meticulous miniature work, who observes everyone with an unnerving intensity, always seeming to gauge the competition. And Marco, the burly, jovial apprentice who, despite his good humor, is fiercely competitive and prone to boasting about his own progress. One particular incident stands out. You're painstakingly carving a detail into a wooden frame for a small private commission, a delicate task requiring a steady hand and hours of concentration. Maestro Alessandro had specifically praised your initial sketches for this frame, a rare compliment that had not gone unnoticed by the others. As you work, focused on the intricate scroll work, you feel a sharp nudge to your elbow. Your hand slips, and a thin, splintered line mars the smooth wood. You look up to see Giacomo, a tool in his hand, a look of feigned innocence on his face. "Oh, forgive me," he says, though his eyes betray a flicker of satisfaction. "My apologies. I was just reaching for this chisel." He picks up a tool that was clearly within his easy reach. The damage is minor, but it's enough to necessitate resanding and recarving a section, costing you precious time and effort. You bite back a frustrated retort, knowing that a public display of anger is exactly what he wants. Instead, you simply nod, force a tight smile, and turn back to your work, determined not to let him see your frustration. You learn that in this environment, Emotional control is as valuable as artistic skill. The rivalries extend beyond simple pranks. There's a constant battle for access to prime materials, the best pigments, the most seasoned wood panels, the finest brushes. These are finite resources, and the apprentices who secure them often do so through cunning or by currying favor with the workshop manager. You once saw a junior master, Master Angelo, a talented but notoriously miserly painter, cleverly misplace a new shipment of expensive ultramarine pigment only for it to mysteriously reappear in his own private store a few days later. No one openly accused him, but the whispers spread like wildfire through the workshop, a testament to the cutthroat nature of resource acquisition. This competitive atmosphere is deeply ingrained in the guild structure. Apprentices are not just learning, they are proving their worth, constantly being evaluated for their diligence, skill, and loyalty. The goal is to eventually become a journeyman, then a master, a progression that relies as much on outmaneuvering rivals as it does on artistic talent. A widely known fact about Renaissance guilds is that promotion through the ranks was often a heavily politicized process, requiring not just a demonstrable masterpiece, the masterpiece or capolavoro, but also the approval of existing masters who might view a rising talent as a threat. It wasn't enough to be good, you had to be accepted, and acceptance often came with strings attached. You also become aware of the subtle psychological warfare waged within the guild. Rumors, often baseless, are potent weapons. A whisper about an apprentice's laziness or a master's questionable financial dealings can spread rapidly and damage reputations. You learn to be wary of casual conversations, realizing that seemingly innocent questions might be designed to extract information that could be used against you. It's a constant game of observation and discretion. One unusual detail you pick up on is the informal system of favor trading among apprentices. Need a specific type of brush cleaned quickly? You might offer to help another apprentice grind their pigments. Too tired to fetch water from the well. Perhaps you can trade for help with an evening sketch session. These small, unofficial exchanges create a hidden economy of favors, a subtle counterbalance to the overt competition. It's a way for apprentices to survive the overwhelming workload and occasionally lighten each other's burdens, even if it's always with an eye on potential future reciprocation. You even manage to strike up a quiet understanding with Marco. Despite his boastfulness, he sometimes needs help with the finer details of his drawings, which are not his strong suit. In exchange for your discreet advice, he occasionally shares better quality charcoal or alerts you to an upcoming delivery of fresh gesso. It's a fragile alliance now, but a useful one. However, despite these informal alliances, the underlying tension remains. There's a particularly sharp rivalry between Maestro Alessandro and Maestro Donato, another prominent sculptor in the guild. Donato specializes in grand, public monuments, and his commissions often eclipse Alessandro's more intimate portrait work in sheer scale. Their rivalry plays out in subtle ways, a sneering comment at a guild meeting, a thinly veiled critique of each other's recent works, or a battle for the most prestigious marble quarry contracts. Historians still debate the true extent to which personal rivalries among Renaissance artists influenced their public careers and stylistic choices. Was Michelangelo's fierce competition with Raphael and Leonardo truly about artistic vision? Or was it also fueled by personal ambition and guild politics? You witness this firsthand when a major commission for a new fountain in the Piazza della Signoria is announced. It's a highly coveted project, promising immense prestige. Both Alessandro and Donato immediately begin lobbying the city councilors, their apprentices, including you, discreetly delivering small gifts or reminders of their master's unparalleled genius. The atmosphere in the workshop grows even more taut. As if the very air vibrates with unspoken hopes and fears, the constant pressure begins to take its toll on some apprentices. You see some succumb to exhaustion, their passion slowly extinguished by the relentless demands and the toxic environment. Others become cynical, their initial idealism replaced by a hardened pragmatism. You, however, find a strange resilience blooming within you. The challenges, rather than breaking you, sharpen your focus, making you more observant, more cunning, and more determined to succeed. You learn to compartmentalize, to let the petty squabbles wash over you, and to focus on the one thing that truly matters, your art. One chilly evening, after the main work of the day is done, you decide to stay late, working on your own anatomical studies by the dim light of a single lamp. You're sketching the musculature of the human arm, trying to capture the subtle flex and tension. Maestro Alessandro, surprisingly, walks in, not to scold, but to observe. He watches you for a long moment, his hands clasped behind his back. You brace yourself for a critique. Instead, he speaks, his voice low. "You have a good eye for truth," he says, gesturing to your sketch. But remember, the body is not just bone and muscle. It is spirit. If you capture only the form, you capture nothing. He then picks up a piece of charcoal and, with a few swift, elegant strokes, adds a subtle curve to a shoulder, a slight tilt to a head, transforming a mere anatomical study into something that suggests life, motion, and even emotion. It's a moment of profound, unexpected mentorship, a reminder that beneath his gruff exterior, there is a true artist who, on rare occasions, is willing to share his deepest insights. It momentarily eclipses the petty rivalries, reminding you of the higher purpose that drew you to this place. But the reprieve is short-lived. The very next day, a minor scandal erupts. One of Maestro Alessandro's recent commissioned portraits, a likeness of a lesser noble, is subtly vandalized. A small, almost imperceptible scratch mars the painted surface just below the subject's eye. It's not enough to ruin the painting, but it's certainly enough to annoy the patron and, more importantly, to cast doubt on the maestro's workshop. The initial suspicion falls, of course, on a disgruntled rival, perhaps Maestro Donato, but as the apprentices whisper, a new, more unsettling possibility emerges. Could it have been an inside job? Someone within the guild, perhaps even within Maestro Alessandro's own workshop. Seeking to cause trouble, you watch as the maestro's face darkens with suspicion, his eyes scanning each of his apprentices, including you. The air thickens with unspoken accusations. You realize that the rivalries are not just about jostling for position. They can turn truly dangerous, threatening not just careers, but reputations. You begin to understand that survival in this brutal political landscape means not only mastering your craft, but also mastering the art of self-preservation, of seeing through the subtle machinations, and of protecting yourself from unseen enemies within your own ranks. The game of whispers and accusations has just gotten far more serious, and you are squarely in the middle of it. You quickly discover that in Renaissance Florence, art is far more than mere aesthetics. It's a powerful tool of influence, a visible declaration of wealth, piety, and social standing. Securing commissions, therefore, isn't simply about artistic merit. It's a delicate dance between your master's reputation, your emerging skills, and the whims of the powerful patrons who hold the city's purse strings. You find yourself thrust into this intricate world, learning to navigate the demanding gaze of the wealthy and the subtle art of pleasing those who hold the keys to your future. Maestro Alessandro's reputation, while formidable, comes with its own set of challenges. He is known for his meticulousness, which often translates to a slow pace, a point rivals like Maestro Fabrizio are quick to exploit. You often overhear exasperated comments from messengers about the maestro's deliberate approach, a polite euphemism for his tardiness. Your role often involves placating impatient clients, delivering small preliminary sketches or carefully worded updates designed to soothe ruffled feathers. You learn the importance of discretion, of presenting your master's work in the best possible light, even when you know he's behind schedule. One of your most crucial tasks becomes preparing the presentation materials for potential commissions. This means meticulously cleaning and framing preliminary drawings, carefully rolling up finished works for transport, and sometimes even discreetly delivering small, exquisite samples of the maestro's skill. A tiny, perfectly rendered miniature or a sample of a particularly vibrant pigment he's known for. You learn that these small details matter immensely. A perfectly presented sketch can sway a hesitant patron far more than a rushed, crumpled one. You recall a particular incident involving a prominent merchant. Signor Benedetto, who was considering commissioning a large family portrait, Maestro Alessandro had submitted a preliminary sketch, detailed and masterful, but Benedetto was known for his indecisiveness. You were dispatched to his villa to deliver a small, exquisitely painted sample of drapery. A swatch of fabric rendered with such lifelike texture and luminous color that it almost seemed to ripple in the light. When you presented it, Benedetto picked it up, his brow furrowed in concentration. He turned it over and over in his hand, his initial skepticism slowly giving way to a look of impressed contemplation. "Remarkable," he murmured, almost to himself. "The very weave of the silk. One can almost feel it. That small, perfect sample. A testament to the maestro's unparalleled skill with fabric. Secured the commission. It taught you that sometimes it's the smallest, most perfectly executed detail that wins over the most demanding of gazes. The world of patronage is not just about flattery and presentation. It's also about understanding the deep-seated motivations of the wealthy. They commission art not just for beauty, but for social currency. A grand altarpiece signifies piety and ensures a prominent burial spot. A family portrait immortalizes their lineage. A fresco in their private chapel declares their devotion and refined taste. You begin to grasp that your art, however beautiful, is fundamentally a tool in their intricate social game. It's a widely acknowledged historical truth that Renaissance patrons were not just passive recipients of art. They were active participants in its creation, often dictating subject matter, size, and even the quality of materials used. They held immense power over artists and their preferences, often driven by personal ego or political ambition, could significantly influence the artistic output of the era. This patronage system, while providing financial stability for artists, also meant that artistic freedom was often curtailed by the demands of the commissioners. One common, yet fascinating, demand from patrons was the inclusion of their own likenesses within religious paintings. While this might seem sacrilegious to a modern eye, it was a common way for wealthy families to demonstrate their piety and ensure their eternal remembrance. You often find Maestro Alessandro subtly integrating the faces of his patrons into crowd scenes, or as minor saints, a clever way to fulfill their requests without overtly compromising the sacred subject matter. It's a testament to the delicate balance artists had to strike. A less known, peculiar detail about commissions is the phenomenon of payment in kind. While gold florins were preferred, artists sometimes received payment in unusual forms, bolts of rare silk, casks of fine wine, or even land in the countryside. Maestro Alessandro once received a small vineyard as payment for a particularly complex fresco cycle, a negotiation that stretched for months and involved guild lawyers. It highlights the fluidity of wealth and exchange in the Renaissance and how artists, despite their lofty creations, were still very much part of the mercantile economy. The most challenging aspect of dealing with patrons is their often fickle nature. A slight change in political fortunes, a new artistic trend, or even a personal slight could cause a patron to withdraw their support, leaving an artist scrambling for new work. You witness this firsthand when a powerful banking family, the Strozzi, suddenly pulls their support for a large-scale project Maestro Alessandro was hoping to secure. The reason A perceived insult from the maestro during a guild banquet, a casual comment about the Strozzi's new, unrefined palazzo architecture. The maestro, typically stoic, is visibly frustrated. He paces the studio, muttering about the arrogance of merchants who presume to dictate taste. You learn that even the most celebrated artists are not immune to the whims of the powerful, and a single misstep in the social arena can have devastating financial consequences. Historians still debate the true extent to which Renaissance artists were able to express their individual artistic vision versus being mere craftsmen fulfilling the dictates of their patrons. While figures like Michelangelo certainly pushed boundaries, Many artists operated firmly within the confines of commissioned work, their creativity often channeled by the specific demands of their benefactors. Was it a symbiotic relationship or a master-servant dynamic? You see evidence of both. Maestro Alessandro, for all his traditionalism, is a formidable artist who imbues even the most conventional subjects with his unique touch. Yet, he is ultimately beholden to the powerful families whose wealth sustains his workshop. In the midst of these high-stakes negotiations, you find yourself occasionally interacting directly with the patrons themselves, usually when delivering or collecting materials. These interactions are brief but instructive. You observe their lavish homes, filled with an abundance of art and luxury, a stark contrast to the humble, dusty workshop where these treasures are created. You also catch glimpses of their personalities. Some are genuinely appreciative of art, engaging in thoughtful discussions about symbolism and technique. Others view art simply as another commodity, a status symbol to be acquired. You learn to discern the difference, recognizing which patrons are truly worth the maestro's concentrated effort. One particularly demanding patron is Lady Amelia, a widow of immense wealth and rigid piety. She commissions a small devotional painting for her private chapel. Her specifications are incredibly precise, the exact shade of blue for the Madonna's robe made from expensive lapis lazuli, the exact positioning of the saints, even the precise expression on the Christ child's face. Maestro Alessandro, for all his stature, finds himself subtly negotiating, trying to maintain artistic integrity while fulfilling her exacting demands. You watch as he presents a series of preliminary sketches, each slightly modified to appease her latest request. It's a masterclass in diplomacy, showing you that sometimes the true art lies not on the canvas, but in the delicate negotiation between artist and patron. You learn that humility, patience, and a shrewd understanding of human vanity are as crucial to securing a commission as talent itself. The pressure of deadlines, often imposed by impatient patrons, becomes another significant challenge. The maestro's workshop is a hive of activity, especially leading up to a major unveiling. Long hours become the norm, and the pace is grueling. You find yourself working alongside journeymen and other apprentices, all pushing to complete their respective tasks on time. The air crackles with a nervous energy, the smell of fresh paint and varnish ever present. You learn to work efficiently under pressure, to solve problems quickly, and to collaborate, albeit reluctantly at times, with your fellow apprentices. The shared ordeal creates a strange bond, a fleeting sense of unity amidst the underlying rivalries. You realize that meeting these deadlines isn't just about the maestro's reputation. It's about the financial well-being of the entire workshop, including your own meager allowance. Failure to deliver on time could mean reduced income for everyone, a threat that motivates even the most jaded among you. The demands of the patron truly dictate the rhythm of life within the guild, a constant reminder that for all the lofty talk of art, it is commerce that truly drives the engine of creation. As you spend more time within the guild, your own artistic voice slowly begins to emerge, a subtle shift from mere imitation to genuine creation. You've absorbed countless lessons from Maestro Alessandro, from the foundational techniques of gesso preparation to the intricate layering of glazes. But now you start to experiment, to subtly push the boundaries, searching for a style that is uniquely your own, all while carefully navigating the guild's strict standards and centuries of tradition. It begins with small, almost imperceptible adjustments. When mixing a batch of blue pigment, you might add a touch more white to achieve a softer, almost ethereal shade for a distant landscape. When sketching a figure, you might exaggerate a gesture or subtly alter the proportions to convey a particular emotion, a departure from the strict classical realism favored by the maestro. These are not grand rebellions, but quiet explorations, practiced in secret during the late hours when the workshop is empty, or on scraps of parchment tucked away in your private satchel. Your own subject matter also begins to deviate. While you dutifully complete commissions for religious scenes and noble portraits under the maestro's supervision, your personal sketches gravitate towards the everyday, the bustling energy of the market square. The worn faces of street vendors, the play of light on a crumbling stone wall. You find beauty in the mundane, a perspective often overlooked by the grand narratives of commissioned art. This personal exploration is a risky endeavor. Guilds, especially those as established as the Accademia del Disegno, are bastions of tradition. Deviating too far from established norms could be seen as insolence, a challenge to the authority of the masters that could jeopardize your future. It's a common historical fact that Renaissance artists, while masters of technique, often worked within highly prescribed stylistic boundaries dictated by their patrons and guilds. Originality as a concept, as we understand it today, was less emphasized than mastery of craft and adherence to established aesthetic principles. An artist's style might be recognized, but it was often a subtle variation on a widely accepted mode of representation, rather than a radical departure. One of the greatest challenges is to find a way to incorporate your unique vision without openly defying the maestro or drawing the ire of the conservative guild elders. You learn the art of subtle integration. Perhaps a background detail in a commissioned painting, a minor figure in a crowd scene, will bear the subtle mark of your emerging style, a more fluid line, a different approach to shadow. It's a delicate balance, like threading a needle in the dark. A curious, lesser-known detail about Renaissance artists developing their style is the concept of the handprint or signature mark that wasn't a literal signature. Artists would develop highly specific ways of rendering certain elements, a particular way of painting hands, the folds of drapery, or the texture of hair that became almost as identifiable as a true signature. You consciously begin to cultivate these subtle signature marks in your own work, a particular way of rendering light on metal, or the delicate curve of a human eye, hoping that one day these unique touches will be recognized as distinctly yours. A quiet assertion of your individuality within the collective. However, developing your niche is not without its internal conflicts. You constantly wrestle with the desire for individual expression and the need for guild acceptance. Maestro Alessandro, while occasionally offering profound insights, remains a staunch traditionalist. He views any deviation from classical forms or established techniques as a flaw, a sign of inexperience. You recall a time you subtly experimented with a new way of depicting cloud formations in a landscape background? The maestro, upon seeing it, simply narrowed his eyes. "The sky," he stated flatly, "is not soup. It has form, structure. Redo it." His words, while harsh, serve as a reminder of the foundational rules you must master before you can truly break them. Historians still debate the extent to which individual genius could flourish within the rigid confines of the guild system. Did the intense training and structured environment ultimately produce more skilled artists, or did it stifle the truly revolutionary minds? It's a complex question. While the system certainly ensured a consistent level of quality and transmitted vital techniques across generations, one can only wonder how many truly unique visions were suppressed in the name of tradition and conformity. Your personal artistic journey is often a solitary one. The late nights in the workshop become your sanctuary, a place where you can experiment freely without fear of judgment. You study old anatomical texts, not just for the skeletal structure, but for the interplay of muscles and tendons, seeking to understand the living form and motion. You grind new pigments, trying different binders, seeking a unique luminosity or depth of color. You even begin to experiment with perspective, attempting to create illusions of greater depth and space than traditionally taught, inspired by the mathematical treatises circulating in intellectual circles. One evening, while you were absorbed in a particularly challenging perspective drawing, attempting to render an archway that seems to recede endlessly into the distance, Maestro Alessandro walks in. He often performs these unannounced checks, a habit that keeps everyone on their toes. Your heart leaps into your throat. You quickly try to cover your work, but it's too late. He pauses, looking over your shoulder at your drawing. It's a radical departure from the flat. Conventional perspectives taught in the workshop. He remains silent for a long moment, and you brace yourself for a lecture. perhaps even punishment. Instead, he simply nods slowly, his gaze thoughtful. "Ingenious," he murmurs, his voice barely audible. Though dangerous, he then offers a single, crucial piece of advice, a subtle mathematical adjustment that instantly resolves a distortion in your drawing, making the illusion of depth even more convincing. He then turns and leaves, leaving you stunned. It's a rare moment of validation, a recognition of your burgeoning talent, and a subtle encouragement to continue pushing boundaries, but always with a firm grasp of the underlying principles. This moment of unexpected approval from the maestro emboldens you. You begin to weave your emerging style into your assigned tasks more confidently, though still subtly. For a minor detail in a fresco, perhaps a cluster of distant trees, you use a softer, almost atmospheric technique, letting the colors bleed into each other, creating a sense of misty distance that is distinctly yours. Or in a portrait, you might capture a fleeting expression, a hint of melancholy in the sitter's eyes, that transcends a mere likeness and suggests a deeper psychological insight. These touches are small, almost imperceptible to the casual observer, but they are your quiet rebellion, your assertion of individuality. You also start to attract the attention of a few journeymen, and even some younger masters who are themselves quietly chafing under the traditionalist yoke. They might offer a word of encouragement, a subtle nod, or even share a new technique they've stumbled upon. It's a nascent network of like-minded artists, all seeking to evolve their craft, a subtle countercurrent to the guild's conservative flow. You begin to understand that establishing your niche isn't just about artistic skill. It's about finding your allies, recognizing those who share your vision, and subtly building your own reputation within the broader artistic community, even if it means operating slightly outside the strict confines of established guild politics. The path to becoming a true master, you realize, is not just about following in the footsteps of your predecessors, but about finding your own unique path through the dense, often thorny landscape of artistic tradition and political intrigue. In the cutthroat world of Renaissance art guilds, the pursuit of artistic purity often clashed with the harsh realities of survival. For you, this meant grappling with the temptation of illicit side projects and the very real risks of defying the established authority of the guild. It was a constant dance between artistic integrity and the pragmatic need to make your mark, or simply to make ends meet. As an apprentice, your time and talent technically belonged to Maestro Alessandro. Any work you produced outside the workshop, especially for direct payment, was strictly forbidden. This rule wasn't just about financial control, it was about maintaining the guild's monopoly on artistic production and ensuring that no unauthorized, untrained art entered the market, potentially diluting the perceived value of guild-sanctioned works. The penalties for such transgressions were severe fines, expulsion, and the ruin of a budding career. Yet the allure of independent work, of creating something truly your own, and perhaps even earning a bit of extra coin, was a constant siren song. You witnessed other apprentices, driven by desperation or ambition, taking on clandestine projects. Whispers circulated about hastily painted devotional panels sold in back alleys, or crude portraits commissioned by commoners who couldn't afford a guildmaster. These were often low-quality works, reflecting the rush and secrecy of their creation, but they represented a direct challenge to the guild's authority. You even heard a story about a young apprentice who was caught painting a sign for a butcher shop, a task far beneath the guild's artistic dignity. He was publicly reprimanded, his hands supposedly bound and displayed in the piazza for a day as a warning to others. Whether true or embellished, the tale served as a chilling deterrent. The temptation for you was different. It wasn't about crude street art. Your burgeoning talent, recognized subtly by Maestro Alessandro and openly by a few discerning eyes, attracted quiet propositions. One day, a middle-aged woman, her face etched with grief, approached you discreetly outside the guild hall. She had heard of your delicate touch with figures, your ability to capture emotion. She wished for a small, intimate portrait of her recently deceased daughter, a private remembrance that she couldn't trust to the more formal, public style of the guildmasters. She offered a modest sum, but more importantly, she offered complete artistic freedom. The thought of creating something so personal, so unburdened by guild dictates, was intoxicating. A less discussed aspect of Renaissance art is the informal economy that existed alongside the formal guild system. Many artists, especially apprentices and journeymen, engaged in moonlighting, taking on small, illicit commissions to supplement their meager incomes or to gain experience outside the rigid training structure. While officially forbidden, it was an open secret, often tolerated as long as it didn't directly threaten the master's livelihoods or the guild's prestige. You wrestled with the decision. The risk was immense. Discovery would mean ruin. But the opportunity to explore your own artistic vision, to paint from the heart rather than by rote, was too compelling to ignore. You remembered the feeling of subtly incorporating your own style into commissioned work, and this felt like a natural, if dangerous, next step. You agreed, with the understanding that the project would be done in absolute secrecy, outside workshop hours, and with no mention of your connection to Maestro Alessandro. Your black market brush became your tool for true artistic liberation. You worked in the dead of night, by the dim glow of a single candle in a cramped, rented room. The silence punctuated only by the soft scrape of your brush against the small wooden panel. You used your own small stash of hoarded pigments, purchased discreetly from a sympathetic merchant. The process was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. Every stroke felt charged with the thrill of defiance, the fear of discovery, and the pure joy of unbridled creation. You poured all your nascent skill into that portrait, capturing not just the likeness of the deceased girl, but the quiet sorrow of her mother, the ephemeral nature of memory. You developed a whole set of elaborate precautions. You always took different routes to your secret workspace, never carrying your materials openly, and always ensuring no one followed you. You spoke in hushed tones when discussing the project with the grieving mother, meeting her in secluded corners of the piazza or during the quiet hours of early morning. The constant vigilance was exhausting, but it heightened your senses, making you keenly aware of your surroundings, and surprisingly, enhancing your focus on the art itself. Historians still debate the true impact of these illicit side projects on the overall development of Renaissance art. Did they foster independent artistic thought and experimentation that later influenced mainstream styles? Or were they merely a means for struggling artists to survive, producing largely unremarkable works? While it's hard to quantify, it's clear that the impulse for creative freedom often found ways to circumvent rigid structures, sometimes leading to innovative techniques or subject matter that might have been deemed unacceptable within the conservative guild system. One particular anecdote you heard from old Pietro, the gossip-mongering journeyman, spoke of a master who once caught his apprentice selling unauthorized miniatures. Instead of reporting him to the guild, the master quietly bought all the miniatures himself, then subtly incorporated their innovative techniques into his own work, never giving the apprentice credit but effectively stifling a potential rival while benefiting from his clandestine experiments. It was a brutal, cynical lesson in how power could absorb and neutralize nascent talent, and it made you even more cautious. Your secret project reached its culmination when you presented the finished portrait to the grieving mother. Her eyes, reddened from tears, widened in recognition. She reached out a trembling hand, tracing the painted features. A soft sob escaped her lips, and then a profound, heartfelt thank you. The genuine emotion in her voice, the pure, unadulterated appreciation for your work, felt like a far greater reward than any guild accolade. It solidified your conviction that true art, in its purest form, transcends rules and regulations. However, the shadows of the guild are long. Rumors, like tendrils of smoke, began to circulate. Maestro Alessandro, ever vigilant, noticed your increased exhaustion, the faint smell of different pigments on your clothes, the subtle shift in your artistic sensibilities. He never confronted you directly, but his gaze became sharper, more piercing, as if he were trying to see through your very soul. The atmosphere in the workshop grew taut, the silence between you and the maestro heavy with unspoken suspicion. You realized that this dangerous game of defiance couldn't last forever. The question wasn't if you would be discovered, but when, and what the consequences would be. The freedom of your black market brush came at a steep price. Constant anxiety and the looming threat of professional ruin. The guild, for all its artistic grandeur, was a viper's nest of ambition, and you soon found yourself caught in the treacherous currents of betrayal and backstabbing. The stakes were high: reputation, livelihood, and even the potential for a breakthrough into true mastery. Every seemingly friendly word, every shared jest, now felt laced with hidden motives, as if everyone was subtly gauging your weaknesses, waiting for an opportunity to ascend by pulling you down. Giacomo, your long-standing tormentor, became bolder. His subtle jabs escalated into outright attempts to discredit you. One morning, a particularly intricate drawing you had left out, a study for a challenging fresco detail, was found deliberately smeared with ink. It wasn't accidental. The lines were too precise, the damage too targeted. You knew it was Giacomo, but proving it was impossible. Maestro Alessandro, inspecting the ruined drawing, simply scowled. Careless. He grumbled, his gaze briefly resting on you with a hint of suspicion. The injustice burned within you. You realized that in this environment, not only did you have to guard your work, but you also had to guard your reputation from unseen attacks. This kind of covert sabotage was not uncommon. The competition for commissions and the maestro's favor was so intense that some apprentices resorted to desperate measures. You'd heard whispers of apprentices deliberately misplacing rivals' tools, spreading false rumors about their lack of skill, or even subtly altering pigments in a competitor's batch to spoil their work. The line between competitive drive and outright malice blurred easily. It's a historical fact that accusations of sabotage and professional rivalry were common in Renaissance workshops and guilds. Artists often viewed each other as direct competitors for limited patronage and prestige. While often difficult to prove, these suspicions contributed to the highly charged and often paranoid atmosphere within artistic circles. Your personal betrayal came not from a rival, but from someone you had come to trust. Marco, the jovial apprentice with whom you had a quiet understanding, had proven to be a useful, if boastful, ally. He had provided you with minor assistance, and you, in turn, had offered subtle critiques of his drawings. You had even foolishly shared details of your secret, illicit portrait commission with him, believing him to be trustworthy. One evening, after a particularly late session, you left the workshop, feeling a strange chill in the air, a sense of unease. The next morning, Maestro Alessandro summoned you to his private studio, his face a thundercloud. On his desk lay a rough, almost crude sketch of your secret portrait, recognizable despite its poor quality. "Explain this," he demanded, his voice dangerously low. Your heart sank. The sketch was clearly a hasty copy, likely done from memory, and only one person knew about your clandestine work. Marco? He must have drawn it and shown it to the maestro, perhaps to curry favor, perhaps to eliminate a burgeoning rival. The betrayal was a bitter pill. You had revealed your vulnerability, and he had exploited it. You stammered, trying to formulate a defense, but the maestro cut you off with a raised hand. "Do not insult me with lies," he said, his eyes piercing you. Your hands, your materials, the style is unmistakable, and the subject is not a guild commission. The evidence was damning. The black market brush had finally caught up with you. The maestro's voice softened slightly, a hint of disappointment rather than outright rage. "I saw promise in you," he murmured, almost to himself. "A unique eye. But this is a betrayal of trust, a defiance of the guild. And defiance here is not tolerated. The consequences were immediate and severe. You were stripped of your more advanced duties, relegated back to the most menial tasks, grinding pigments for hours, cleaning floors, stretching canvases under the watchful, sneering eyes of apprentices like Giacomo. Your allowance was withheld, and your access to quality materials was cut off. You were effectively put in artistic purgatory, a pariah in the workshop, a public example of the cost of disobedience. Marco, meanwhile, seemed to prosper, suddenly receiving more favorable assignments, his face now bearing a smug, self-satisfied grin. This experience, though crushing, became a crucible. It hardened your resolve. You learned to never fully trust anyone in this cutthroat environment. You learned the painful lesson that kindness and apparent camaraderie could be masks for ambition and deceit. But most importantly, it ignited a fierce determination within you. If the guild sought to break you, you would not shatter. You would endure. You would find a way to make your art, no matter the obstacles. Historians still debate the ethical implications of apprenticeship and patronage systems in the Renaissance. While they fostered artistic excellence, they also created environments ripe for exploitation, jealousy, and betrayal. Was the rigorous and often brutal training a necessary evil for the production of genius? Or did it crush more spirits than it elevated? Your experience certainly leans towards the latter, at least in the short term. A peculiar detail you notice during your period of disgrace is how the other apprentices react. Some, like Giacomo, revel in your downfall, their taunts more open now. Others, particularly those who had also secretly engaged in illicit work, avoid your gaze, a silent acknowledgement of their own fear and complicity. A few, however, offer subtle gestures of sympathy, a shared glance, a small, unrequested favor like leaving a cleaner rag near your workstation. These small acts of defiance, tiny sparks of humanity in a harsh landscape, are what keep your spirit from fully breaking. You remember old Pietro's stories of Marco, the talented sculptor banished for offending a patron? You realize you are now in a similar artistic wilderness, but unlike Marco, you are determined to find a way back to the light. One freezing evening, as you are scrubbing paint off the stone floor, long after everyone else has left, Maestro Alessandro appears. He stands over you, his shadow long and imposing in the flickering lamplight. You brace for another rebuke. Instead, he speaks, his voice a low rasp. "You think I did not know about your private work before this?" he asks, his words shocking you into stillness. "Do you think I am blind deaf?" He shakes his head slowly. Talent. Boy is like a flame. It can be nurtured, or it can consume. I let you burn a little to see if you would learn control. Marco's betrayal, and it showed me your weakness, your trust. But it also showed me your fire. And fire, if controlled, can forge steel. He pauses, then adds, "Your punishment is not for the art. It is for the secrecy, for the defiance of the guild, and for your foolish trust." He then turns and walks away, leaving you stunned. It's a cryptic message, a hint that perhaps his harshness was not just punitive, but a strange, brutal form of lesson, a test of your resilience and a warning against naivete. The betrayal, it seems, was not just a tool for Marco's ambition, but also a calculated maneuver in the maestro's own complex, unforgiving mentorship. The path to becoming a master in the guild was not merely a journey of artistic development. It was an arduous climb through a political landscape fraught with trials, tests, and cunning maneuvers. For you, now marked by a period of disgrace, this ascent felt even more daunting, requiring not just artistic excellence, but an almost Machiavellian understanding of the guild's inner workings. After your punishment period, Maestro Alessandro slowly began to reinstate your duties, though always with a lingering air of suspicion. You understood this was a test, a trial by fire to see if you had learned your lesson, if your ambition had been tempered by the harsh realities of the guild. You worked with renewed diligence, performing every task with meticulous care, never questioning, never complaining. You learn to be invisible, to work efficiently, and to let your actions speak louder than any words or boasts. The first step on this grueling path was to gain the status of a journeyman. This wasn't simply a promotion, it was a recognition of a foundational level of skill and reliability. As a journeyman, you would be allowed to work more independently, assist the master on larger projects, and even earn a small, steady wage. The path to this status involved presenting a portfolio of your most accomplished works to a committee of masters. You spent countless hours preparing, refining old sketches, creating new studies, each piece a testament to your hard-won skills. The journeyman examination was a tense affair. You stood before a panel of stern-faced masters, including Maestro Alessandro and even the formidable Maestro Donato. They scrutinized your drawings, critiqued your technique, and asked probing questions about your understanding of perspective, anatomy, and color theory. You answered each question with humility and precision, drawing upon every lesson, every observation you had made during your years of apprenticeship, even the ones learned in the shadows. To your immense relief, and perhaps due to a quiet word from Maestro Alessandro, you passed. The moment you were officially recognized as a journeyman, a weight lifted from your shoulders. A small but significant victory in your relentless pursuit of artistic independence. But journeyman status was merely a stepping stone. The true pinnacle, the ultimate goal, was to become a master, to earn the right to open your own workshop, take on your own apprentices, and receive direct commissions. This required the creation of a masterpiece capolavoro, a work of such extraordinary skill and originality that it would unequivocally demonstrate your mastery of the craft. And then, the political trial gaining the approval of the existing guild masters, a group often resistant to new competition. It's a well-known historical fact that the masterpiece requirement was a crucial, often arduous, hurdle for artists in Renaissance guilds. This work was meant to showcase the artist's full range of skills, from drawing and composition to painting or sculpting technique. It often took months, sometimes years, to complete, and its success determined an artist's entire future. You began to conceive of your masterpiece, a work that would not only demonstrate your technical prowess, but also subtly incorporate your unique artistic voice, that blend of classical skill and modern naturalism you had been cultivating. You chose a subject that would allow for both a devotional altarpiece, but with a twist. Instead of idealized, static figures, you would imbue them with subtle human emotion, a sense of lived experience, using light and shadow to create a dramatic, almost theatrical effect. Your chosen subject was the Lamentation of Christ, a scene of profound sorrow. You envisioned Mary's grief not as a stoic, idealized sadness, but as a raw, almost tangible anguish, her face etched with real tears. You spent weeks making preparatory sketches, studying cadavers to perfect the anatomy, and experimenting with various pigment mixtures to achieve the deepest, most sorrowful blues and grays for the sky. You worked tirelessly, pouring every ounce of your talent and newfound resolve into this piece. A peculiar detail you observed during this time is the informal betting pools among the older journeymen and even some junior masters regarding who would successfully achieve master status. They would wager small sums on whose masterpiece would be approved, whose political connections were stronger, and who would ultimately join their ranks. It highlighted the competitive, almost gladiatorial nature of the master trials, a silent testament to the high stakes involved. The masterpiece itself became a canvas for your subtle rebellion. You used a slightly bolder palette than Maestro Alessandro preferred, adding a dramatic contrast of light and shadow that hinted at the emerging chiaroscuro style, a technique that would define later artists but was still radical for the guild's conservative tastes. You painted the figures with a profound sense of psychological depth, their emotions palpable, a departure from the more idealized representations typical of the older masters. You were taking a calculated risk, hoping that the sheer quality of your execution would override any stylistic objections. Historians still debate the extent to which guild politics, rather than purely artistic merit, influenced who achieved master status. While talent was undoubtedly essential, connections, reputation, and the ability to navigate the complex web of allegiances and rivalries within the guild certainly played a significant role. Was it a meritocracy or a club? The answer likely lies somewhere in between. The day of the masterpiece presentation was nerve-wracking. Your lamentation stood proudly on an easel, draped until the masters arrived. The air in the guild hall was thick with anticipation. The same panel of masters who had judged your journeyman portfolio gathered, their expressions unreadable. Maestro Alessandro was there, his gaze uncharacteristically intense as he looked at your shrouded work. Maestro Donato, known for his cutting remarks, stood nearby. When the drape was finally pulled away, a collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. The raw emotion, the dramatic light, the almost tangible grief in the figures, it was undeniably powerful, but also undeniably different. You watched their faces, searching for a hint of approval, a flicker of condemnation. Maestro Donato was the first to speak. Bold, he grunted, his eyes narrowed. Perhaps too bold. The sentiment, it verges on the theatrical, but even as he spoke, you noticed a glint of grudging admiration in his eyes. Maestro Alessandro, however, remained silent, walking slowly around the painting, his gaze lingering on every detail. He spent a long time examining Mary's tear-streaked face, the subtle interplay of light on her hands. Finally, he turned to the assembled masters. "This is a work of courage," he said, his voice measured. "It shows mastery of form, of color, of composition, and it shows heart. He has learned what I have taught, and then he has found his own voice." His words, delivered with quiet authority, silenced any lingering dissent. His support, after all your trials, was the ultimate validation. The vote was taken. While not unanimous, the majority of the masters, swayed by Alessandro's endorsement and the undeniable power of your work, voted to approve your masterpiece. You had done it. You were a master. The grueling trials, the betrayals, the endless hours of labor, it had all culminated in this moment. You were no longer just an apprentice under the shadow of a master. You were an equal, ready to carve your own legacy in the vibrant, brutal world of Renaissance art. The journey had been long, but the ascent was complete. As a newly minted master, you now wield a degree of power within the guild, a stark contrast to your years as a subservient apprentice. But this power isn't absolute. It's a delicate balancing act, a continuous game of alliances, rivalries, and strategic maneuvering to shape the guild's future and solidify your own position. You quickly learn that true influence comes not just from artistic skill, but from mastering the subtle art of guild politics. Your first major challenge as a master is to establish your own workshop and secure your initial commissions. This requires navigating the guild's internal network, leveraging the connections you've subtly built over the years. You approach former journeymen who now run smaller studios, offering collaborations on larger projects. You discreetly reach out to lesser patrons, those who might not command the attention of titans like Maestro Alessandro, but who represent a steady stream of work. You learn to speak their language, to promise timely delivery, and to subtly differentiate your emerging style from the more established masters. One of your early commissions is a small fresco for a modest chapel belonging to a newly wealthy merchant family. It's not a grand altarpiece, but it's your commission, entirely under your creative control. You relish the freedom, choosing a color palette that subtly reflects your unique sensibility, and a composition that allows for a more naturalistic depiction of the figures. This sense of ownership, of fully realizing your own artistic vision, is deeply satisfying. However, the politics of the guild continue to loom large. You are now part of the Master's Council, attending their meetings, where decisions about new apprentices, guild regulations, and major commissions are debated and voted upon. You quickly realize that these meetings are not always about artistic merit. They are often arenas for personal agendas, entrenched rivalries, and battles for financial control. Maestro Alessandro, still a formidable presence, often acts as a gatekeeper, subtly influencing decisions to maintain his own dominance. Maestro Donato continues to be a vocal opponent, his booming voice often clashing with Alessandro's more measured tones. A widely known fact is that Renaissance art guilds operated like powerful trade unions, controlling entry into the profession, setting prices, and regulating artistic standards. This gave the masters immense collective power, but also fostered internal political struggles as different factions vied for control and influence over these lucrative operations. You learn to choose your battles carefully. Sometimes, it's wiser to remain silent, to observe the flow of power, and to understand the underlying motivations behind proposals. Other times, a well-placed word, a subtle alliance with a sympathetic master, can sway a vote in your favor or against a rival. You remember Pietro's cynical advice. This guild, it's a nest of vipers. Now, you are one of the vipers, or at least you are learning to navigate their intricate nest. One particular incident showcases the subtle power plays. A proposal is put forth to raise the fees for new apprentices entering the guild. On the surface, it's about maintaining guild standards. But beneath, it's a move by older, established masters to limit competition and ensure their own workshops remain well-stocked with cheap labor. Maestro Donato vocally supports it, arguing for preserving the purity of the craft. You, remembering your own struggles as a poor apprentice, feel a pang of injustice. You speak out, subtly framing your opposition not as a challenge to tradition, but as a way to nurture new talent and ensure the guild's long-term vitality. You find a surprising ally in a quiet, older master known for his intricate illuminated manuscripts, who echoes your sentiment. The proposal is narrowly defeated, a small victory for you, and a subtle shift in the guild's power dynamics. A peculiar detail you observe is the gift economy that persists among the masters. While open bribery is frowned upon, subtle gifts are exchanged: a bottle of rare Tuscan wine before a critical vote, an invitation to a private viewing of a new work, or even offering a minor non-competitive commission to a fellow master. These aren't explicitly transactional, but they are understood as gestures of goodwill that can be called upon later. Subtle threads weaving a complex web of obligation and influence. You find yourself participating in this dance, learning to give and receive these intangible favors. The tension between your own innovative leanings and the guild's conservatism continues. You begin to subtly introduce elements of your unique style into your commissioned works, pushing the boundaries without overtly breaking from tradition. For a religious altarpiece, you might use a more dramatic chiaroscuro to heighten the emotional impact, or render figures with a psychological depth that was rarely seen in conventional works. You understand that true change comes not from direct confrontation, but from subtle infiltration. Historians still debate the mechanisms by which artistic innovation eventually overcame the conservative forces within guilds. Was it the sheer power of revolutionary talent that simply could not be ignored, or was it a gradual process of subtle shifts, driven by changing patron tastes and the quiet influence of new masters like yourself? It's likely a combination, with new generations slowly chipping away at old dogmas. Your growing influence also means that Maestro Alessandro occasionally seeks your opinion, a tacit acknowledgement of your new status and his respect for your judgment. One afternoon, he presents a preliminary sketch for a challenging new commission, a complex allegorical fresco for a public building. He seems unusually hesitant. You study the sketch, and with newfound confidence, you suggest a subtle alteration to the composition, a slight shift in perspective that would draw the viewer's eye more effectively to the central message. He studies your suggestion, then nods slowly. Indeed. He He murmurs, "That would improve the flow." It's a quiet moment, but it signifies a profound shift in your relationship. From student to respected peer, you also find yourself becoming a mentor in your own right. New apprentices arrive, fresh-faced and full of the same wide-eyed dreams you once held. You recognize the familiar glint of ambition, the occasional subtle attempt to undermine a peer. Remembering your own painful lessons, you try to guide them, offering not just artistic instruction, but also quiet warnings about the treacherous political waters of the guild. You teach them not just how to mix colors, but how to read the room, how to choose their battles, and how to protect their nascent talent from the inevitable jealousies. You see a bit of your younger self in them, and you hope to spare them some of the harsher lessons you had to learn through trial by fire. You are now part of the very fabric of the guild, not just an artist within it, but a force shaping its future, one subtle brushstroke and one careful political maneuver at a time. The game of power, you realize, is just as intricate and demanding as the art itself. The years spent navigating the brutal politics of a Renaissance art guild, from a hopeful apprentice to a respected master, have etched themselves deeply into your very being. As you look back, you realize your legacy isn't just in the frescoes adorning chapel walls or the portraits gracing noble homes. It's in the indelible mark you've left on the guild itself, and perhaps on the trajectory of Florentine art. Your workshop now hums with the purposeful activity of your own apprentices and journeymen. You teach them not only the meticulous techniques of painting and sculpting, but also the unspoken rules of survival in this demanding world. You instill in them the discipline Maestro Alessandro once demanded, but you temper it with a newfound appreciation for individual expression, a lesson learned from your own secret brushstrokes. You encourage their experiments, subtly guiding their explorations of light, form, and emotion, hoping to foster a generation of artists who are both technically brilliant and genuinely innovative. You see flashes of your younger self in their eager faces, their frustrations, and their quiet triumphs, and you offer a steady hand and a knowing gaze. Remembering your own arduous journey, your influence within the guild has grown steadily. You are a regular presence at council meetings, no longer a silent observer, but a voice of experience and quiet authority. You advocate for reforms, for a more equitable distribution of commissions, and for policies that nurture emerging talent rather than stifle it. You often find yourself debating with older, more conservative masters, respectfully challenging their traditional views while drawing upon your own deep understanding of the craft. You've learned that true power isn't about shouting the loudest, but about building alliances, presenting compelling arguments, and demonstrating consistent, undeniable skill. Your subtle triumphs in these meetings, a new apprentice policy, a vote for a more progressive artistic competition, are as satisfying as any completed masterpiece, for they shape the very future of the artistic community you cherish. It's a historical truth that later Renaissance artists, having learned from and sometimes broken away from the rigid guild structures, significantly influenced the development of art, ushering in new styles and greater artistic freedom. Your journey embodies this slow, generational shift, where individual genius, once constrained, began to assert itself more openly, laying the groundwork for the Baroque era. The greatest measure of your legacy, however, is not found in guild politics or even in your workshop. It lies in the art itself. Your paintings and sculptures are now sought after by discerning patrons across Italy. They recognize the classical mastery, yes, but also the distinctive touch, the profound human emotion in your figures. The dramatic play of light and shadow, the subtle psychological depth that sets your work apart. You often revisit your early commissioned pieces, those subtle rebellions hidden in plain sight, and you smile. Your unique style, once a secret, now flows freely through your new creations, inspiring others and subtly altering the artistic landscape of Florence. You have not merely conformed, you have evolved, and in doing so, you have contributed to the evolution of art itself. A unique, less talked about aspect of an established master's legacy was the school they left behind. A master's influence was measured not just by their individual works, but by the distinctive style and techniques passed down to their apprentices and journeymen. Your school develops a reputation for its blend of meticulous classical training and a bold, naturalistic approach, attracting promising young artists who seek to learn from your unique vision. This indirect influence, shaping the next generation, becomes a crucial part of your lasting contribution to art. As you reflect on your journey, you remember the relentless grind of the apprenticeship, the bitter taste of betrayal, and the constant pressure of the patron's gaze. You remember the old, grizzled Pietro, whispering tales of guild intrigue, and even Maestro Alessandro, whose harsh lessons forged your resilience and whose rare moments of insight unlocked your potential. Each challenge, each setback, was a brushstroke on the canvas of your life, shaping the artist and the strategist you became. Historians still contemplate the enduring impact of the Renaissance guild system on art. Did its rigorous training cultivate unparalleled technical skill, or did its conservatism occasionally stifle groundbreaking innovation? Your own life offers a complex answer. It was both a crucible that refined your talent and a cage from which you eventually broke free. Subtly and with purpose. Now, as dusk settles over Florence, casting long shadows across the Arno, you often find yourself in your private studio, no longer creating for patrons or guild approval, but for the sheer joy of it. You work on small, intimate pieces, capturing the fleeting beauty of a twilight sky, the quiet dignity of an elderly face, or the vibrant chaos of a flower market. These are works of pure expression, unburdened by commercial demands or political considerations, a testament to the enduring passion that first drew you to the canvas. The air is still, save for the soft rustle of your brush, and a profound sense of peace settles over you. You have navigated the brutal politics, honed your craft, and left an indelible mark. Your legacy is secure, whispered not just in the hushed tones of art connoisseurs, but in the enduring beauty and evolving spirit of the city's art.